What's really crazy is the same day that I met Vineeth, finally, when he decided to work with me, March 23rd, 2023. That's the same day that my mom had her brain hemorrhage. I was trying to reach out to my mom and let her know about this, because I just wanted to. She's the first person along with my dad that I always. This is that like Iravinde Tholi
Hi Amrit.
Hi Vishal.
Welcome to Film Companion South.
Thank you so much for having me.
But before we get to your origin story, the story of how you made your first album, I just want to, I don't know if you remember, but one of my favorite stories of how somebody just got into music is, from what I got from an old interview of your mother's, about how, she was at home and then your uncle came back home from school and, he was randomly singing, a tune that the lyrics were, of course, maybe not accurate, but then that song just started going around your house and your grandmom got hooked to that song and then she called her principal or something like somebody like that and then found out the actual tune. It was a Madan Mohan song.
Correct.
So when you get into music and that's the kind of musical family that you're from, what is your oldest musical memory that is kind of similar to this?
I think it's interesting that you bring that story up, because my idea of music has been as romantic as a story, right? And the person you're talking about, my uncle Sabesh, he's also been a significant part of the process of coming up with ideas for my music generally. But I think my earliest memories have been just sitting on my mom's lap when she used to take part class, or just being with my father when he's like, we have a collection of records, vinyls. So just listening and sitting with him, listening to all kinds of music from across the country. So I've been exposed to a lot of ghazal music, a lot of old Bengali music, because my father's from Calcutta, and also a lot of music from the West, Harry Belafonte, Paul Anka. So these kind of names bring up like vivid imagery in my mind, because that was the kind of environment I was put in.
Yeah. So when you say music was always playing at home, what's it like? You wake up and there's music on the record or or a stereo or video cassette, something. Was it constant?
I mean, that's the funny part. When I think of it, it seems like it was always constant, but it was never regimented. It was never like, okay, Kalangathala, you have to sit and part class or in the class, on the class. It was never like that. It was never forced upon me, but it was just kind of the way of our home. And I did start learning both the violin and piano at a very young age, Western classical. I also learned Carnatic music from my mother's guru, and I used to sing with her, but nothing felt forced. So it was actually like pretty much all the time there'd be music at home. Through our conversations, through our arguments, through everything, music was kind of like the thing that tied us all together,
I'm really interested in knowing the argument part. So what do you mean by that?
I mean, every kid argues with their parents, right? So like growing up, I used to argue with my dad, I used to argue with my mom, but it was never about anything significant. But the only thing I do remember from those times is the music that we.
What is the song that's playing in the background or something like that?
Yeah, probably, yeah. So like Mehdi Hasan, for example, is a very familiar, even MS Baburaj, for example. These are the kind of people who have shaped the kind of musical romance that I have today.
Tell me this, okay? When you're coming from a family where music is so important, right? And of course, it's almost like your parents are also almost entirely into music. Do you have any kind of pressure or any other kind of thoughts that you have yourself that maybe this is where I should be? It's almost like doctor parents or engineer parents trying to think that, okay, maybe this is what I should do. Does it somehow become like, okay, this is not just something I love and this is my passion, but this is also occupation? Does your brain go to that part of the whole thing?
I think while growing up, I never had any kind of pressure of that sort. But when I got closer to like the ending of my period in school, I started thinking about how I could potentially do music full time. In the sense that I was always doing it. Veetla music irukona, paadinir violin vaashan, something or the other would be there. But it was never in my mind an idea that I could formally do this as a career. And then when I did start thinking about that, immediately I was thinking, okay, I already have somebody in my family who's done it and who's achieved like pretty much most of the things you can achieve at that level. So I was like, what can I potentially contribute to this field? But then I think as I sort of came of age and started spending more time with my music, I built an independent, very innocent relationship with the art, right? And especially during my gap year, I was spending all my time with my music, and that was the demand of the year. Like it was a sort of test to see whether I can have the discipline to pursue the life of a student of the arts. So at that time, of course, I had a lot of insecurities. In fact, one of my songs, Manase, is kind of based off of that. And I was also I'm also training in classical music. So Carnatic music was what I spent most of my time doing. So obviously there were constantly feelings of, am I cut out to do this? Will I be able to do this sustainably? Will I always be compared? But now I've come to a point where if I get compared, for example, like one of the comments of a song that released from Varshangalkku Shesham was that I sound like a male version of my mother. I'm sure like 5-6 years back I would have been like, I want some originality. But now I'm very honored to be compared to her. I feel like
you're trying to own that.
Yeah, I'm really trying to own it. So I mean, it's nice to see that now. First it was like half cup empty, now it's like half cup full. You know what I mean? So yeah.
But I want to just ask you one question because of the entire conversation you spoke about the influences and the music that you were listening to, right? So what are the conversations that you're having with your friends and people your age? Are they looking at you like somebody who's from another generation? Are you able to kind of listen to the classics that you're anyway listening to and what was popping, what was happening at that time? How does that work?
I think as much as I listen to music from another world in that generation, I'm very much clued in on the music today because I love the music from today. It's not like that's the only kind of music I listen to. It's just that my parents don't probably as much listen to the music from today, and because I was growing up with their palette of music, this is what was predominant, in the sense that when I conceive of melodies, I conceive them both from the kind of music I listen to today, but also significantly from that. But with I'm very I love the music from today. I love everything that's popping, and I love how the music industry is also changing in many ways. I mean, there's always plus and minus to how you look at music, but I think the relevance of music that we hear today is obviously significant. So it does shape a lot of how I think as well.
So it's not like your friends are like
no. We're all on the same page. No, it's not like, I mean, of course there are sometimes that I'll be playing like Coke Studio Pakistan, or I'll be playing Ilayaraja Rajesh sir, and then be like, "Seri, kono skip pani edo, beat edo polama," and that
it's a party and stuff.
Yeah, but I very much do appreciate that kind of music as well. I love to make that kind of music.
Now let's talk about Varshangal for a bit, because it's like this huge Vishu hit, and it's like pretty much like I'm guessing your life has changed in the last 10 days or so after the movie's released, right? Of course, the songs were already a huge hit. And from what I understand, you're actually gone to Vineeth to just show him your songs, right? It's not really with any intention or with any thought of, this might lead to a movie composition or anything of that sort. So, of course, how did that happen? But was composing for movies ever a part of the plan? Or is it something that just was too different, too business oriented or too market oriented, that it's something you never really gave any thought to? How was the two things?
I think to answer your second question first, I've always wanted to compose for movies, definitely. I've along with my musical practices, something that I love doing is composing for a scene, conceiving of music, and I think my independent music is what gives me most joy, and that's at its very fundamental core, composing, right? So, and to go back to your first question, I think when I met Vineeth, it was very the way in which we met was also very interesting. I met him through Divya, his wife, and she showed him a lot of my music, and he liked it. So he called me over, and we were sharing ideas. We were sharing what we like to each other. So it's very innocent and very romantic in many ways, because he was telling me the songs he likes. And
what were some of those?
He was Oru Pushpam. And then that Tamasam Varu. So when he played that, I was like, okay, that's a lot of the kind of music I've grown up listening to. So I showed him the kind of music I like, which is like Madan Mohan's Zara Siya, those kind of songs, right? And a lot of the songs that I have not yet released, like there's an album that I've done with my mother, is from that generation. It's called Songs and Memories. Actually, the first time I'm talking about it. But it's a series of songs that signify our relationship, my mother and my relationship, memories that I've had with her and memories that she's had growing up vis-a-vis music. And so when I showed him some of those songs, he was like, okay, this guy seems to like a lot of stuff from years before he was even conceived, forget born, So in the first meeting, we never spoke about anything to do with film, anything to do with his film or my intentions with him, or because at that point nothing was like it was just two people meeting, two people who love music.
And that is after Hridayam. You don't even have an idea about what he's working on at that time.
I mean, I was very aware of who he was, and
yeah, of course. But in terms of this movie, you don't know much about. Okay, is he writing? Is he going to write?
Nothing. I had no clue. We just met, and I think, but in his mind, like I said, he was trying to gauge and see if it would work out as a collaboration. And then we were texting constantly for about a month. And a month later, I went back to his house, and I think by then he'd heard a lot of my unreleased material, and we were also talking a lot about the kind of music I like. And he was asking me things like, what do you think of this kind of a story? So I started getting a vibe that, okay, maybe he wanted to work with me. And then, of course, a month later, we met and we went through the first half of this movie, which was then just a story to me. And then he just popped the question. He was like, would you be interested in collaborating with me on doing this? And I was obviously thrilled. And it was followed by some immaculate biryani that he made me.
In Chennai?
In Chennai, yeah. Okay. He makes amazing biryani.
He made that biryani?
Oh, yeah, he made it.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, please underline that. He makes amazing biryani. Some of the best biryani I've had. But yeah, so that's how we sort of decided to work together. But yeah, like you said, it didn't start with the idea of me reaching out to him saying, I want to compose for you. Because that was not something I thought I could do also. I didn't know that.
And something I find very interesting about Vineeth is, of course, he's a director, he's an actor, but it's very difficult to get a director who knows as much music as he does, right? Yeah. He's musically trained, he's a singer, he understands film music to another extent, and the way he uses background score is unbelievable, right? The way it kind of lifts scenes and stuff like that. So what did you come across in that 1 year period that you must have been working on this? What did you feel was the advantage of working with a director who pretty much knows music and exactly what to tell you and exactly how to guide you, compared to maybe somebody else who's completely letting you be and give me 5 songs and score this scene? What is the difference?
I think, like you said, he's so musically sound that we were able to talk about a lot more nuanced things when it came to our songs. And the way he was kind of pulling me into Varshangalkku Shesham before it released, before it was shot, was so deep that I had the entire story in my mind. I had visuals like very clearly in my mind. So when I was composing, it was a lot more easy for me to draw from that. So he'd made that entire process of not just narration, I don't even call it narration. It was like sort of winning me over into the story. So the entire grammar of the music was already set by the story. The one thing that was different, I think, for Vineeth with this film vis-a-vis his other films is, I think generally when he sits with music composers, he really spends time with them physically when they create together. But in my case, because of my mother's medical setback, I was physically separated from him. So our collaborative energy was very different. He didn't sit with me when he made the songs, and for whatever reason, that really worked out in the sense that he was giving me a narrative, and I was kind of supporting that narrative with my music. That's how I look at the songs. And he really sort of pulled them out of me, and then I was also giving him things that he really liked. So from the album point of view, I think it was really exciting. But the other thing though is it was very similar to the way I approach my independent music, in that it's very indulgent. And what I really appreciated about that was he was very giving for my indulgence for the music. And the only difference, of course, is there is a visual medium and a story that I'm working towards. That story is at the forefront. So, and then with the background score, it was a completely different thing because we were staying together, we were spending our time together. Every minute we were talking about the story and trying to inspire ourselves further from what was captured to try and elevate the scenes. And there were many places where we complemented what was happening, many places where we contrasted what was happening. And it was like a beautiful learning and beautiful journey for me. And I'm really grateful that I had Vineeth to sort of go through all of this with.
Yeah. So, and I just want to understand the timeline a little further because here you are, at 24, 25, just
25,
yeah, 25, doing one of the biggest director in Malayalam is his film, like a director who celebrated for his music. You are all set to start working on that, and that's when something so personal happens to you, right? I mean, your mom fell unwell, and you had to kind of rush back to London, right? At that time, while you've just started a huge journey. Of course, at 24 or 25, nobody's expecting you to really be able to deal with such a complex situation. But what was your learning through that phase? Like, did you discover parts about yourself that you didn't know existed, or is it even possible to kind of demarcate work and personal life, or when it's already something so important to you? So how was that phase like?
Absolutely. I think what's really crazy is the same day that I met Vineeth, finally, when he decided to work with me, March 23rd, 2023. That's the same day that my mom had her brain hemorrhage. Same day. So I met Vineeth in the morning, and I was trying to reach out to my mom and let her know about this, because I just wanted to. She's the first person along with my dad that I always.
Best news.
Yeah, best news, right? And I was really excited, and I was trying to get through to her. And then, of course, that evening, because I couldn't get through, I got a call from. By then, she'd been admitted and everything, and obviously, what she had was very, very serious. Like, it was fatal. Of course, I had to immediately go there and be by her side. Two things. One is, the moment it happened, I called Vineeth, and I was like, "See, this has happened, and I really have to go be by her side." And I completely understand if you would like to work with someone who may be more emotionally available, but I can promise you from my end that I'll give this everything I've got as soon as I can. And he
was
a
difficult phone call,
I mean, it was difficult for me, and I'm sure it was difficult for him. It was more difficult for him, if anything, because I was so occupied by my mother's health. But it's honestly, to this day, I'm so grateful that he trusted whatever he did and decided to stick it out with me. And like, cut to a few days hence, I was in the UK and in the ICU, and my mom was not doing great at all. But by then, I'd sort of I was smart enough to take my mic, a little MIDI, and I had my laptop, and I picked up a little guitar on the way in the UK in a garage sale. Literally, it was like 40 pounds, and it was some old guitar which sounded beautiful but had its issues. But it was just enough for me to kind of come up with ideas and start the collaborative process with Vineeth. And we did, like, in about a week's time, I'd started sending him ideas. And like, to answer your other question, I did discover a lot of parts of me, that a lot of facets of my emotional this thing that I didn't have the chance to sort of experience, because I think this really pushed me also as an individual. I really feel like none of this would have been as easy if it weren't for Vineeth, because he was somebody that I was speaking to on the daily. Like, when I was not with my mother, I was speaking to Vineeth. We were talking about the movie, we were talking about the songs, how we can create new ideas, and he was also a friend. I was also telling him what I was going through. And cut to like a year later, it's about a year since the entire thing, a little more than a year, right? So it's beautiful, because in another interview I said that, actually the interviewer said that it's like two parallel journeys. One is the journey of the film, and one is the journey of my mother's health, and both have come to a full circle. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. it was quite a journey, yeah.
Can you take me a little deeper into your mind space at that time? Because, like you said, you're sitting in the ICU.
Yeah.
And of course, a part of this, you might look at it as, okay, this is work, this is important, I need to be professional. But, you're probably talking to the doctor, you're seeing, your father, you're seeing other relatives going through their own episodes. And then you're on one side of that room, and, somebody's trying to inspire you. Are there days where you're just not able to, like, you're too distracted, or you're too thinking about other things, that you're not really able to focus on music, or was it the other way? You're just trying to look at music as the escape, or solace or whatever. How did you find yourself in that position?
Vishal, to be very honest, it was definitely the latter. As in, one thing I've generally got feedback even from my friends is I can't differentiate between what I do for work and my life, because like it's very blended. Like, at least with my approach to music, is it's very personal. So I don't wear it on my sleeve as my job. Having said that, I think when I was there, of course, everything was heightened. My emotions, being there with my mother, and also not knowing with certainty that she'd make it and how she'd make it, and there's a lot of things. And of course, my father, who was also, we were all affected, right, at equal and different levels. But the album and creating for this album also became my sort of venting, or like my haven of sorts, like you mentioned, because I could really I could go into my own space when I was doing that, and I really needed something of that sort. So in a way, this album is extra close to me, I guess, because of this journey. And at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do, right? So it's not like I feel like if anybody was put in this situation, they would have done the same. They would have figured it out. It's not like it's impossible. And I guess the circumstance, and more than anything, the fact that it was my mom who has not just been like my mother, but an incredible, my dearest friend, my institution. So she was there, like that was enough of a motivation for me to sort of figure this all out. So I mean, it's I feel like it's not, for all better ways of saying it, it wasn't a big deal. It's just that something that anybody would have figured out how to do.
And emotionally, of course, I'm expecting Nyabagam to be the most complicated, complex song to compose at that time.
Actually, no. Nyabagam was not. Nyabagam was the most personal, is the most personal song from the album, and I think that I have created. Only because, again, of the circumstance and the fact that my mother wrote it. But it was not more than complex. It was very deep. The fact that it was in that circumstance and it was written by her from where she was, knowing that she's been going through something. The fact that Vineeth wanted to do that itself for us was very inspiring.
What an idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
It's only somebody who's been healed, or who understands the power of music, who can even suggest that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's very easy to think that, okay, I'm crossing a line when I ask this, but if you know music, you know that that's what the other person wants, right?
Yeah. So. And at that point, I didn't really think about where my mom may have wrote it from, what her point of view is. But I think as I mulled over the lyrics more and more, a lot of it was also, since I know her so well, I guess, her way of emoting whatever she was going through. In fact, at this very spot, we did a small sort of celebration of opening the first vinyl.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of it that's yet to release about Nyabagam, where my mom and Vineeth had a chat, and it's for the first time that she's ever spoken about how she felt, and I guess in some way Nyabagam was her sort of victory over this whole thing too, and also what she was going through. So for me, that song became that. It became this journey of my mom and my family, and the thing is, it holds such a significant place in the film and for Vineeth. So it all really came together. So more than difficult or different, I think it was just a very emotional song.
What were those conversations like? Like you described, of course, on the day you had to be with your mother. At night, that's when Vineeth is calling you, and you guys are having like those 3-hour, 4-hour conversations through the night, right?
Yeah.
What are those conversations like? Is it him telling you the scene and trying to get a certain kind of sound out of you, or is it a mix of both? Like life and music.
There were many calls that were at night. There were many calls that were even during the day, and it was not really time bound. It was just what we were going through at that point. So a lot of it was, and we were also texting a lot. Like if we go up on our scrolls, it's just endless texts about because we started with Madhupagaru, for example. So he was trying to create a universe for me to create Madhupagaru. And a small thing that happened was the first demo of Madhupagaru, before it became Madhupagaru, was based on a brief that he gave me, that he wanted something that was slightly Qawwali, and it's like a mehfil, and there's a gathering, and there's some alcohol and food, and people are having a good time, right? So I created something that fit the bill of what he said, and then that melody he liked, but it didn't work for the scene, and then he sort of he had a very beautiful way of kind of reeling me in further, where he was like, this is a Qawwali situation, this is a mehfil, but there's a lot of the 70s that you need to bring to now, which is like there is an aspect of marrying the contemporary universe with that traditional or otherworldly thing, and he said it in such a beautiful way. He further delved into the story, and then Madhupagaru became the demo, and that worked. So these were the kind of conversations we were having. And Nyabagam was again, I mean, you've seen the film, but for those who haven't, I'm not going to spoil it. It holds a fairly significant...
of course, yeah.
It holds a lot of the...
In the plot, not just the movie, it's a part of the plot.
Yeah, it's part of the plot. So, of course, that relevance was conveyed to me, but more than that, it was also a song that I think Vineeth wanted to go beyond just the film, in the sense that it can be something that anybody can relate to at any level emotionally. It can be about friendship, it can be about a relationship, a parent child relationship, anything of that nature, right? So it was interesting the approach with which he sort of arrived at these ideas, and then having my mom give it a shot. In fact, he came up with the word nyabagam. He was like, there are many songs that start with very other like common Tamil words you can think of, but nyabagam is a very different word to start a song. Nyabagam oda aarambikkalama, he said. And then he was like, Ammata kettu paakriya nyabagam kapram enna varalana. So she said nyabagam modide. And modide is not a very common Tamil word that you would think of in a song at least. So I think that really inspired him. And then he had a few more ideas. So and at that point she wasn't speaking, she was writing to me because of all the other stuff she was going through medically. So we were conversing with a book, with a diary that I still have. So it was those things that really took us through this entire. So that was the nature of conversations. He came down actually to the UK. He came with his family.
meet you.
He came with his family, and then he took a detour. He met me, and that's when we went through the second half of the film. So, and that's also around when I sent him the demo of Nyabagam.
And it's such a beautiful song because in the first half you're only discovering it as a part of the plot, right? Of course, you're hearing not the entire song, you're hearing parts of it. The movie is driven forward by the song, and in the second half, of course, it's important to the plot even then. But every single time you hear the song, you're reminded of that time. You're reminded of a different period. It's a friendship song. It's a love song. Like you said, it can be interpreted in so many ways, right? Tell me about the other songs in the movie. Like, of course, you have songs that are Madhu Pagaru and Nyabagama songs that belong probably in the 70s and 80s in the movie. When you get to the other side, when you have to create a fun, crazy Nivin Pauly intro song, what part of brain are you accessing for that? Is it just and in that complicated emotional period, what is that like? Was it fun and relaxing, or was it something else?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was super fun making Nivin Pauly's song because, again, with this story, Vineeth, he kind of told me the angle with which Nivin Pauly is also being portrayed, in the sense that the kind of character he is, there's a lot of meta angles to it, and also that it's kind of an anthem, So this is like, in fact, when we release like anything on YouTube or Instagram, you'd see like the first 50 or 30 comments are just Nivin Pauly fans assembly. The idea that Nivin Pauly is in a film. So that was the kind of fandom that I was being introduced to with Nivin Pauly. So this phenomenon that was created around him kind of inspired me to create something with equal value. So in fact, the song starts with marching sounds because in my mind, Vineeth and I were discussing, and he was like, he's got like such a large family behind him. Not just in Kerala, I think everywhere, right? So I thought, okay, maybe we can have the sound of people marching as though they're Nivin Pauly army, like sort of like his fan army just marching, So that's how I introduced the character, and it's juxtaposed very interestingly in the film with a scene which I'm not again talking about. But so that was the space from which we had to create the song, and also it had to really be relevant today with the kind of beats and the kind of arrangement that the song needed. And even the lyrics, I think Vineeth just knocked it out of the park with the words in conveying everything about Nivin Pauly, but also the character in the film song.
And it's not like you prefer either of these, right? Both are like you were able to get into both zones.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, with equal pleasure. It's not like I had fun doing one over the other. I think if I have to make more Pyara Mera Veeras, I'd do it happily.
One thing I needed to kind of talk to you about is, of course, I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but the painting right behind you is, something that you painted. Something I've always found very interesting is about how when you're trying to work in one art form, and you have the musical equivalent of a writer's block or something like that, I've always heard of how it's probably another art form that solves this problem. Because we tend to get stuck, right? We tend to get stuck into patterns, and we keep trying to attack that with everything that we have in terms of experience. But it's when we completely move away from this that this problem gets sorted. So I want to kind of understand, as somebody who's like great and multi-talented and all that, how does it really work? Is it all a part of the same, same circle, same passion, or do you kind of find these two art forms interacting with each other within you? How does that work?
I think art for me, as in painting, has been something that has just again, like music, I've done it since I was a kid. I remember Chinnada Irukkacha Amma vandu nariya kacheri ellam paadva. So I mean, she still does, but when when I used to go with my dad, I mean, I'm like every other kid, right? I'd want to like go do something else. I'd be distracted. I'd probably cry at throw tantrums. So I guess my father's way of keeping me engaged was to bring a sketchbook along. He would draw something, like he'd draw half of something, like an instrument or an animal, and I tried to complete the drawing. So that was how he kept me engaged. And art again became like another way for me to just sort of just go through my day, you know. And I never put too much thought into drawing. I never went to art class, or I never went to any place where I formally learned. Like even now, if you ask me about techniques and all, I really don't know. But now I feel like my relationship with art is such that at many times, I guess one way of looking at it is like a creative block. But at many times, I feel like I just it's very calming for me to just sit with paints and just paint. So it's as simple as that. Like I just really enjoy doing it, and I do it. And I guess both come from the same space. Both my music and my art come from the same space. So yeah, they all are from the same circle, I guess.
We're at this stage where we've just discovered you as a composer. We're listening to your songs, and people are buying the records. They're listening to you, and it's got millions of views on YouTube. And as I was driving here, I was thinking about the day I bought the Minale cassette. Okay, it's the closest that I've ever had to like that Roja moment or whatever people describe it to be, right? Because the second you discover a new composer, it's totally different, right? It's not like your favorite composer's new album. It's like you're entering a new musical brain, and it's happening to you. Of course, I know you were very, very young then, but do you have any memories of like Minnale or some of the wonderful songs that your mom has sang? And of course, you know her voice, everything, but then discovering it as a listener more than as a son.
So something funny about my mother that many people don't know is that a lot of the film songs, because also of the volume of songs she's sung, a lot of the film songs she's sung, she's not seen the films.
She's
not seen many of the films.
Has she seen Minnale?
I hope she has. For all purposes, yes, she's seen Minnale, but many of the films she's not seen, and therefore many of the songs she doesn't remember which song is from which film. So therefore, it never played I mean, of course, I knew she was a singer who's singing songs, so I'd either go with her to the studio, but it ended there. Like, I don't have memories of like, okay, iniki ukkandu vasikara kekala, or I don't have that kind of, at least musically, I don't associate with that zone of her music. But I guess Life of Pi, the soundtrack that she did for Life of Pi, was something that I was I think I was also about 14, 15 then. No, I was 13, 14. Okay. I mean, I don't remember. Give or take a couple of years. Yeah. I was at an age where I was starting to absorb a lot more. I really enjoyed this phase where I get to create with her, or I get to sort of be guided as to how she would approach creating music. And like I said, this album, Songs and Memories, is something that I'm very excited by, because it's a lot of her creative ideation, a lot of my creative ideation, a lot of arguments, a lot of collaborative spirit, all coming together in a very new way. So, I mean, I don't know.
So, as somebody who's, of course, I'm guessing you still follow Malayalam cinema music and Malayalam cinema to an extent. But when you're getting involved at this stage where it's a Vineeth Sreenivasan movie, right? He's the guy who's introduced Jakes Bija, Shan Rahman, Hisham, who's like a big composer in Telugu right now. What were some of your understandings of those composers, those songs, and the space that Vineeth likes to operate in, and what are some of your favorite songs from those movies,
I think with me, at least, something that really worked for the two of us is, I have seen a lot of his other films. I have heard
even otherwise.
I mean, a lot more after I met him, because at least I just wanted to sort of get to know the artist behind Vineeth, So I think with our film and with Vineeth, I looked at it very individualistically, as in Varshangalkku Shesham was a universe that he was creating, and I had no baggage, at least like with vis-a-vis Vineeth. Of course, I had seen Hridayam, I have seen Thota Tharani, but I have like a broad understanding of the kind of movies that he made, but I never looked at it from a point of view of
researcher.
Researcher. Look at the movie separate, or the music separate, or the filmmaking separate. So with Varshangalkku Shesham, I was just trying to bring as much of me that he wanted, and he was trying to take out as much that he wanted. So we were creating stuff that is very much my sound, but also very much Varshangalkku Shesham, and therefore that was 50% of him as well, right? So I didn't really have the perspective of his other films in my purview when I was creating the score or the songs of this.
But tell me a little bit more about this process. I think you've already mentioned it earlier about how he's kind of drawing you into this space. It's almost like fishing. Like from what I know, he's telling you the exact perfect set of words that obviously makes you feel relaxed and like you're opening up, and also get the exact tune that he wants for his movie. So what are the words he's using? What are the kind of things he's telling you to get you to that space?
At the outset, he was not just telling me about the film, he was telling me about his creative process of arriving at such a story, or at an optic level what this story meant for him. And then every scenario for which I had to sort of create music was not like, okay, இப்படி ஒரு scene இருக்கு, இந்த sceneல இந்த emotions வருது, இந்த emotionsக்கு ஒரு பாட்டு போடணும். அந்த மாதிரி it was never like
that. It was not that basic.
It was, in fact, for ஞாபகம், for example, he just gave me like a broader picture of the kind of emotions that are being played around with in the film. That would not have been in the film, in those scenes. And he just said, okay, now you sort of create your thing. And at every stage, he was kind of, saying, what if this is like a loss of friendship, or a breaking away of a relationship, or a parental breaking away? It can be anything, How would you try to arrive at that? Because I think his goal was for me to not get boxed into one scenario or one scene. And at that point, I wasn't thinking from that angle. I was thinking, okay, he's giving me this much information to feed off of, and I'm going to make a song. It was never like, okay, inge or scene irukku, you kind of make a song. So I think now when I look back, every song was like that. Even with Sangamam, that is about Murli and Annie, the characters in the film, it was very there were a lot of undertones to the song that were needed then, and so that really shaped the way I even came up with the tune. Like it's not just a romantic song, There can be undertones that are very subjective to each listener. So those were the kind of things that I really enjoyed collaborating with Vineeth on. He was really able to say certain emotional things that were really moving for me, and that really inspired me to come up with certain melodies.
An example?
Jeevitha Kadagale is a song about enthusiasm, about trusting your instinct and leaving your home, going to a place where you want to make something out of your life, right? So it was not just an anthem, but a calling of a certain spirit that needed to come through. And it was also the most challenging song to create because of the number of levels that the song has. So I had to come up with a melody that captured that at the first level. Adukaprom arrangementla a lot needed to be brought for it to sound as grand and as it not fast but paced as it needed to be sound. So we recorded a string section from Budapest. About 42 strings players played that song, and then we still felt like there was more needed for the song, So we recorded a series of like rhythm instruments. Like we had a percussionist come in. His name is Karthik, and he just laid out like the most beautiful percussion ideas. And at every stage when I was giving him ideas, I was thinking of the journey that they were taking. So potentially in a train. So I wanted the rhythm to sort of mimic that of a train, So like a it's like it's sort of like a train probably from that generation. So that's the kind of percussive idea that we wanted to bring in the song. So all of those ideas came from Vineeth, because he was trying to draw me in more and more into that universe. So almost to the point where it's like a pack of cards. If that percussion is removed, that one card is removed, the entire song collapses. But that pack of cards, I got the inspiration only from Vineeth. So that's just to give you a brief idea, and every song was like that. So I think working with him was in so many ways so much learning for me.
Yeah, and in 2024, he's probably the only person who's going to come to a music director or composer and say, let's not worry about numbers, let's not worry about virality. Of course, that's what gives people nightmares, so much stress, because the songs don't just have to be beautiful, but it has to like get you 100 million views or whatever. What did that kind of do to you when he tells you that he's just completely taking that pressure off you?
Actually, the beautiful part of this is he didn't tell me. I think he had told himself this in his mind, and he didn't tell me to like approach the song in a certain way. Like he never said make a melody that lasts for a while, but he sort of, without telling me, told me. His process was very like solemnly, he kind of brought that out. So I didn't have the pressure of making a certain kind of melody a certain way, and I think that's a Looking back, that's a great thing. So.
Again, looking back, it's been like a little over a year, right?
Yeah.
Of course, your life has changed, and and I think you used the word healing in this interview, which is such a beautiful word to kind of describe this year. How do you kind of look at yourself in this 1 year, and how you've changed as a person?
Yeah, I think a lot has changed. Definitely, I think this creating this album has been healing. It's also been telling of the journey that I've had with this film, because it's my first, so it's very special working with Vineeth and his family, who are now like my family. But more than that, the journey that I've had with my mother's sort of health, and it's a full circle moment. I don't know how to describe the feeling, because like the movie released less than a week ago, and my parents came to Cochin. My mother came down. So it was very special. It was a very honest feeling that I felt like I really wanted that feeling, And this album has given me that feeling. And I've got a lot of closure because of the year that I've had now with this point, and the movie releasing, and the movie doing well, and the songs coming out. And so, yeah, it's these are like sort of the Cliff Notes versions of what I'm going through. Yeah.
And was it pretty much like the emotions that the characters go through while they watch the movie in the theater? Did you feel a meta moment there?
Pretty much I did, actually. Interesting that you say it, because there were many points in the film where a lot of emotional struggle is dealt with, right? And there were many points where I was emotionally moved, but because also I've seen the film so many times, I'm not necessarily focusing on his emotion, but it's making me remember a certain emotion that I have gone through. And I think that's the power of Vineeth, and in many ways this film also, is that when people watch it, I feel like it takes them back to certain things that they remember, and I guess that was also kind of our thing with Nyabagam. So hopefully people will continue to like it.
Thanks so much, Amrit. I hope you can just play us some tracks, some of these songs, and kind of show us the evolution of it from an idea to the final track.
Absolutely.
Can you just take me through the different stages, the different phases of Nyabagam, and how it finally reached this version?
Okay, for sure. So, I mean, when we started Nyabagam, Vineeth had an idea that we start with strings. Like the first bit can open with the string section, and then the song can come. And then I think I sent him a demo which is along those lines. So it started as a string bit, and it really crescendos, and then Nyabagam kind of starts. And then of course I came back from the UK, and then when I was going about doing the live recordings, all the instrumentation and everything, at that stage it was all MIDI, all programmed areas on my laptop. And then when I came down and we decided to work it, one day we were just sitting and we were jamming, and
here
I was sitting on my piano, and I just told him, maybe at some point, maybe we could do like a different approach where we have a piano introduce the song. And then we were just jamming, and I just played the song and I sang it. And then he was like, Amrit, let's start like this. So that song transformed from being edithodne emotional to starting in a very sort of in a mellow way, and then kind of building. So the arc changed.
Yeah.
So I think that was definitely one instance. So this harmonium is a very special one because it belonged to my mom. She got it when she was 18. So it's like really, it's like ages old. And even though it's very like clanky and cluttery, it's very personal to us. So this has sort of been my musical read of sorts. All my ideas, I kind of use this to practice. So when I was in the hospital and when we were doing Madhupagaru and some ideas for Jeevitha Gadagle also, a lot of the ideas were recorded there and sent to him. And then of course when I came down, harmonium is a very integral part of that song, and even in the video, as in the film, you do see a harmonium. So all that this is that like Iravinde Tholi so all those movements were all like inspired by the movements of the harmonium, and as I would sort of like come up with different ideas on this, I kept refining the song, and then of course we went and did the live thing. So all the clanky harmoniums that you hear are this.
It's contributed.
Yeah, it's these clanky sounds, but also I guess somewhere it's contributed. So Jeevitha Gadagle for me, I mean we did talk about it. It was a lot of layers, right? So my thing with Jeevitha Gadagle was to see how I can bring aspects of Western classical music, like the strings and the orchestra, with very Indian melodic elements. So like it's a lot of it is even raga based, for example. And one place where I really feel like for me I enjoy creating music is interludes. So and all of those interludes I came up with like so after the charam is so those ideas are based off of like a rag, for example, mand, and those were all conceived of sitting on this harmonium. And at least for Jeevitha Gadagle, I looked at it as like 3 separate pieces: the Pallavi, which is the chorus of sorts, and there are 2 verses in the songs, 2 charanams. And then I looked at the interludes as separate pieces. So and then there's a flute interlude, which is again in like Brindavani. It's a different rag.
And so you got all of them together.
I kind of got all of them together. And it was interesting to see how I could stitch it all and create one homogeneous melody.
Yeah, like so smaller ideas somehow merged into one.
Exactly. And this is like a very big part of coming and bringing all of those together. Yeah.
And finally, maybe a couple of lines of your favorite song that your mom has sung.
Can it be a non-film song?
Yeah, of course.
It's actually a lullaby that my father composed. It's an album called Moonchild.
Okay.
And it's in Bengali.
Oh, it's in Bengali.
Padani mashi pishi mode badi sho khat nae palo nae chok pete bosho ghum padani mashi pishi mode badi sho khat nae palo nae chok pete bosho.
Oh, what a lovely song. Listen to the rest of it. Thanks so much, Amrit.
Thank you
Thanks so much for doing this with us.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks for being so vulnerable and honest, about such complicated times, that most of us will never be able to understand.
I really appreciate the way you sort of led me into this, and you gave me that space to do it. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to what you're going to do next.
Thanks a lot. Like me.